I was waiting on the sprint. The sprint was not waiting on me. I did get my first pick off. We got Bijan at 3. The rest of that time was me getting the stream set up because I did not think the draft would fill that quick. We are in a sprint, though. My favorite contest. Very excited. So let's get ready and let's get this MFer under the way. Let me get the rest of my setup going here. And I will be set. On the clock at 22 with Bijan. We're looking at Tampa Bay, Arizona, LAR. We could just go McBride. I don't hate that. I really do love Tyreek. It would give us a double up into Tampa Bay. So honestly, that's what I'll do. I love a lot of Tampa Bay this year. Great offense. Love Baker. Love pretty much all of their receivers. So working into Tampa Bay twice is not something I'm going to be afraid of doing. I was going to say if McBride or Marv are there, we can easily go with that. Chase Brown is okay. T. Higgins will be the backup if Marv isn't there. More than happy to take Higgins even though he doesn't play anything super well. He is just a great wide receiver on a great team that's going to throw the ball a lot. Was wide receiver, 6 last year on a points per game basis. Who knows if it maintains that high of a ceiling if he's healthy all year. There could have been some lower games to bring down his average. I do think we go Marv. Let's play into our first pick, which is B-Rob. And while I do have Higgins higher than Marv in my personal rankings, Marv has a lot of potential. I don't think it's too much of a drop-off. I do perceive it as a drop-off, Higgins to Marv, but it's not something I'm going to fret over when the game stacking gives us a little bit more ceiling in that route. Have Higgins higher. All right. Pull this puppy up for the chat. And I'm good to go. Also to keep some eyes, make sure the draft's still running well on the stream. All right, perfect. Next pick. Looking at 46 into 51. Let's see what we got here. Okay. Apologies as I still get a couple things set up. Honestly, if we had gone Higgins, could have got a Flowers game out of him, 15. Nothing too bad there. We could, double up in Miami. It's another offense that honestly, partially because I do love taking Tyreek Hill a fair bit, I do find myself constantly being tempted to double up into Miami. In the sprint, Miami's also just a great team in my opinion. Pittsburgh game admittedly will be lower than the others, but I do think people underrate how good the Steelers offense can be. At Pitt, though, week 15 for Miami could be a potential problem. Certainly a team that struggles in the cold, but hopefully, for our purposes and any Miami stacking that we do, it's not too bad. Then they play Cincinnati and Tampa Bay, which should both be shootouts. So I really do like Miami for the sprint this year. It's certainly not the worst decision I've ever made. I also really love Caleb Johnson. Opens up taking him later. I maybe draft Caleb Johnson a bit too much. And I've already expressed my love for Tampa Bay. Who is Tampa Bay's other matchup? Carolina. Okay, we can keep that open. It's 48-51. 46-51. Apologies. At 46, we do have a fair amount of options. Ratio going at 39. Honestly, don't see that too often. I've seen him slip a lot more into the early 40s, and I'm tempted to take him there. I mean, if he gets it past 45 to 46, anything like that, I'd be taking him all day. I don't think JMO plays too much into what we want to do. We could take DK. I do love DK both individually and with the stacking we can maybe do. It also justifies JMO at a slight drop at 51. Not the worst. Well, I am more than willing to buy into McLaurin dips right now. I don't think this is the right team for it. Oh, we're going Doom? Fuck it, why not? I don't think this is a Hurts naked play. Granted, I could pick up Devonta at the next pick, potentially. doesn't really play well into what we're currently building towards. I'll keep this simple. We'll just go DK. We already know we now have 2 games with Miami. Further justifies Waddle at 55. Double up into Miami. Or sorry. Where did I get mixed up there? I was thinking that we had taken Higgins. Well, we will have 2 games with Miami after we get into Tampa Bay later. But right now, we are sitting on that angle. Hurts this late is tempting. Could go Hurts solo, get Tyreek later, and then not take... Let's do it. I don't do this often, but I think I can more than justify it. Hurts at a decent ADP drop. 7 spots after ADP. Technically 8. 7.8. And then we'll work into, more likely than not, just Tyreek and Tua. If we do happen to see Baker on like another like 7 ADP drop, and I do get set up fairly well for a Tampa Bay double with Godwin and Egbuka, we can do that and be very set off 2 quarterbacks there. Certainly not the worst thing in the world. We can likely take Goddard later, get a little bit of exposure to the Philly passing game, which we're not going to have. Not too concerned about it, considering you can get value out of Hurts just from the tush push and his rushing capability. Obviously, always great if you do have a receiver for him, but Hurts is one of the few quarterbacks that you can, even at this kind of premium, justify taking him naked. Our next picks will be 70 and 75. Slight reach on Egbuka to guarantee the double, and then take Baker at 94. Does put us fairly behind the 8 ball at running back. What would our next 2 picks after that look like for the running back room? It would be 99. We'll go pick 100 and then pick 120 is about the 2 ranges that I need to be taking my RB2 at. Which honestly, I don't think is something I'm willing to sacrifice there. I think that's a bad play, admittedly. Yeah, I don't think I'd want to do that. It puts us way too far behind at RB2, in my opinion. We'll see how the picks line up, but I doubt that's going to be something I do. We already got the value at quarterback. We can just take a Tampa Bay double and avoid Baker. I don't know if I feel that. It's probably just take Tua later and survive of Tua and Hurts. Caleb Johnson here at 70 is good. I'd be happy with that. With Pitt, Laporte is also good. We could even go... I mean, that'd be really pushing it, though. But it's not the worst idea to then take Rodgers later, go Hurts Rodgers. Could work. Yeah, I don't hate that. Can work out the rest. Laporta goes. That's fine. We can live off that. Probably going to go Caleb here. And then we may have to really consider the Rodgers angle. I'll go Caleb, and then likely I'm going to go Monty. And do we just entirely avoid the Tampa Bay angle? It's probably a bad play. But I do think Monty's fine at 72, and then we can just work in some smaller minis with Tampa Bay into our other matchups with Bijan and Tyreek over this 3-game stretch. I'm having an internal conversation if Debo's potentially better playing into Hurts. He could be, but I'm going to take the 2-game lineup with Godwin. I feel pretty good about the top 3 receivers we have to give us some room there with Godwin while he's on the mend. All right, let's queue up the rest of this shit. ATL does... I doubt that I'm going to go that angle with Pitts, but I could. Wow, Baker goes at 81. All right. Happy we didn't bank too heavy on that Tampa Bay angle. Very interesting. Depending on the value that we get Tua at, we could even... maybe go 3 quarterback. I doubt many people are doing that with Hurts, and I'm not even sure that's something I would want to do. But it is an option, potentially. Next 2 should be, yeah, 94, 99. B-Rob would be more than fine if we make it back. He also plays fairly well into like a game neutral Philly game. I doubt it's going to be super neutral. At least the tempo will have to be, I think, fairly up pace in a Philly-Washington game. But it's never a bad thing. Judkins, I'm not going to take these 2 picks. I'd rather get a little bit more value off of people not knowing what's going on. Hawk's not a play here, neither is Kelsey. Houston, we get 1 game off of, could work into some other things with later players in LA and Las Vegas. But this is just a fairly easy B-Rob to me. We will need... Samson will probably be a decent pick working into the uncertainty with Judkins. Because we are starting to get to the point where even if Judkins is back, he's missing a fair bit of camp. Even on your worst case scenario with Judkins back, Samson could be getting more of the nods early, and then we still have the 17 lineup for Samson. It's not the worst idea. Could also just take Ford. Guess that neither of the rookies get too much work super early. We'll take Ayuk. I don't love doing that after taking Godwin, but there is value in a top-end wide receiver coming back off the mend. Could have taken Scatterboo. I don't love Scatterboo, to be quite honest. I think it's not going to be good enough of an offense to support 2 running backs. So I'm basically of the opinion that I'm only drafting either one of them. Want to get an ADP value off of them. I feel like that's a fairly easy way to go about it. Not too harmful to your brain. Does open up some... Well, I don't have to overrate Chicago, to be quite honest. Could work into a little bit of Warren. Only 1 game off it, though. Tennessee, only 1 game. Yeah, we don't have to stress any of the Chicago matchups right now. Hopefully we do see some value on either Scatterboo or Tracy here. I'd be more than willing to take them at the next 2 picks. Samson we would like to keep in mind. Same with Jerome Ford. Yeah, even though I'm not a massive Scatterboo fan, getting him tough. Regardless, getting him in this range off that ADP value, over 10 picks past where he normally goes, that's more than enough value to justify it. And we do have a single game to play into him over the 3-game stretch with B-Rob. I do appreciate going running back on game stacks as opposed to, especially when they're middle round running backs. B-Rob into Scatterboo feels a lot better than like B-Rob into Malik Neighbors. Although, given the game script and a get matchup like that, it could work. We do have... Trey Harris is appealing, but he's not like a must-take. I do like Njoku a fair bit. We can plan for him at the next pick. Do we go Burden? Do we go Bateman? I view Burden and Harris in kind of very similar lights. Harris definitely has a lot more target opportunity, I think. I think it's more unlikely that Burden becomes Amon-Ra in this offense than Trey Harris becomes a usable fantasy asset. Like, I do think people overrate just because Burden was a big slot in college that he's going to be the Amon-Ra role, when it very well could be, especially in this first season, that DJ Moore gets all the value out of the Amon-Ra role and not Luther Burden. But any rookie is going to have a fair bit of upside in the 15, 16, 17 stretch. Knowing that we have Burden playing into Ayuk later in the season also helps a little bit. It does put into question some of our early season production at wide receiver outside of these top three. So that is something we do have to consider a fair bit more. In terms of David Njoku, I've been giving both Njoku and Jerry Jeudy a lot of praise in these recent videos and streams. Cleveland just throws the ball so much. The past 2 seasons, they've thrown the ball so much, even with horrible quarterback play. And I don't think that's just I know for a fact that it isn't just a Deshaun Watson thing. They did it with and without Deshaun Watson in the game. It wasn't like they were trying to justify the Deshaun Watson deal by throwing the ball a lot more. So whether it's going to be Flacco, Kenny Pickett, Shedeur Sanders, I doubt it'll be Shedeur. It should be Flacco for most of the season. If you draft any Cleveland players, you should hope that it's going to be Flacco for most of the season. They're going to be throwing the ball a fair bit, and if it is Flacco, Njoku played very well with Flacco under him. Made me a fair bit of money in those fantasy playoff, FFPC playoff challenge. Njoku was great the year that Flacco rolled out with him. I have been doing this a lot. If you're going to let me, I know Najee Harris has some issues, but the ADP value is so there for what is a position that, while he didn't have an eye, he could certainly still have been reading up on the playbook, and running back, by all accounts, has been one of the few positions where you don't need to have a full grasp of the playbook to go out there and make a play, be valuable for fantasy purposes. Javonte Williams also, I love these values. I'm not going to lie. Javonte Williams is one of the only running backs in this range that, right now, besides Dylan Sampson if Judkins doesn't play, is like the 1A for the time being. Jadon Blue is certainly providing a very real threat, but for right now, he's the 1A, and I still have a little bit of faith in Javonte Williams. So if I can get him at the ADP value, I'm going to do it. For now, we will just take Najee. I admittedly draft a whole lot of Najee, but I like the value this late into the draft in an offense that by all accounts, is usually some form of committee. It doesn't mean that Najee is going to be a massive play, but he's a high-value handcuff in a running back room that's going to run the ball a lot. Like, Greg Roman runs the ball. They're going to establish the run, make sure that Herbert doesn't have to take super high risks, put him in the best position to succeed, and that's when Herbert's at his best. Just give me the running back value for now. I'm fine with that. Also gives us the depth we needed week 5 after our 2 running backs are on bye there. Hopefully will do wonders for us early in the season. Is kind of a backdoor into, I guess, that subject. Javonte Williams, even if he is the eventual 1B, pairing up with Caleb Johnson, to me, makes a fair bit of sense, since you assume Johnson will be the inverse. While I love Caleb Johnson, the reality is Jaylen Warren will have a role to start the season. I just personally think, which I feel like a lot of people don't price in, I fully believe that Caleb Johnson, towards the end of the season, can fully take over the backfield and be like a top weekly running back in that 15, 16, 17 stretch. He can catch the ball. He is a fantastic runner, and I do think people underrate his pass blocking ability. There have been reports of some struggles, and admittedly, Jaylen Warren is one of the best pass blocking backs in the league For how small he is, he really throws his body behind it. So there is fair reason for people to think that Johnson can't fully overtake the backfield. But I think he can. And until that point comes, Javonte should hopefully have at least the 1A part of his backfield. So you get a little bit of half and half there. And I think Javonte offers a lot more upside than just being a first half of the season 1A, especially if he fully takes over the backfield. We are on the point of camp where, like, Jadon Blue's explosiveness right now in camp is what gets to be on full display. Like, once we get later into camp, into preseason, like, his explosiveness is very good. We aren't in, like, game situations right now. He has full reign to take advantage of the field in more open rushing lanes, while the most drills are a lot more contact avoidant, let's say. I don't think we're going to go Jonah with this next pick. I do have him saved up here just to remember. Brenton Strange doesn't really work up into us any matchup-wise. New England neither. Cedric Tillman would be fine. We are playing more into Cleveland than I would have expected us to be fair. But it'd be another ADP value. A wide receiver that when he did play, at least more than like 10 snaps like he did early in the season, he had some fairly good showings. I think we'll go with Wright. I'm considering Beck, but I don't think we need to do that. We'll go Wright. I am passing on Chubb here simply because I've spoken on it in a previous video. Ford goes, that's fine. We can just plan for Beck. I could take a value tight end here, I guess. I don't love it. We do have... We'll take Chubb. Admittedly, 7 running backs isn't usually where I go with this. The reason I was going to avoid Chubb is because I do think that Woody Marks is the much better pick more often. Like, Chubb was never supposed to be, hey, week 1, if Mixon can't play, we're going to turn to Nick Chubb. I think the team wanted to give him a lot more time to get back into his best health. So I feel like Mixon's going to have to miss a lot of time for Chubb to be a super valuable piece. Like, in my eyes, Chubb to the Texans was like, hey, we're late into the season. We want a big bruising back that can spell Mixon more and keep him healthy. That's where Chubb comes in. Chubb doesn't come in early season when you really need him to. That said, as long as Chubb can play in the first couple weeks, give you a little bit of value, especially when we have 2 running backs on bye week 5, he can still do that. And then if Mixon re-aggravates the injury later in the season, be that really late season, back to full health, how did Nick Chubb ever get on another team type of thing? Because Nick Chubb is a back that I feel like we don't put in the same light as Derrick Henry enough, but Nick Chubb is like an anomaly of a human being. Him and Derrick Henry are the 2 of the only running backs that I kind of put my faith in to regularly beat out the age cliff, the age drop off. So even with as gruesome as an injury as Nick Chubb had, I still have a lot of faith that late season he can provide value, especially in the event that Mixon re-aggravates his injury, which, I mean, it's not something you should bank on, but when you have a running back injury this early into the offseason that is expected to miss some time, it can be a thought in your mind. I say that even as someone who has been taking Mixon on an ADP fall a fair bit. We'd love to get Rodgers here. I mean, I would hope with 5 guys with 3 quarterbacks, we won't have to redirect our focus here. So we'll see how this plays out, but I'm fairly happy with Hurts, Rodgers as a solid, consistent 2. Hopefully he won't have to do too much. We just get a solid season out of Hurts, maybe an occasional spike week out of Rodgers. But yeah, that's all we really need. After taking Hurts off an ADP value, a quarterback that you can take naked because of his rushing ability and because of the tush push, Rodgers should not have to do too much in any given week besides week 9. And we play into Metcalf and likely going to take Freiermuth later. I still think Freiermuth offers a fair bit of value. All right. Yeah, we'll close this out. Wide receiver, tight end. Because of the Chubb pick, we can't afford to go 3 tight end. Not that 3 tight end is massively more optimal than 2 tight end. Null's a fair bit of value, and we are in Houston to a slight degree. Yeah, I think Null offers way more ceiling than any of the other receivers still on the board. Admittedly, though, still brings in our problem where early season without Godwin and Ayuk, like, I would normally want a receiver that's going to give us much more in the early parts of the year. Which is why, usually with Godwin or Ayuk, I never really like taking them both together, to be quite honest, because of the position it puts your wide receiver room in. Massively upgrades our 15, 16, 17 ceiling, but to what I perceive to be a fairly big detriment to your advance rate. So, something to consider. I usually do like taking... brain, don't fail me now. McMillan. Simply because, like, I love Egbuka, but early in the season, with Godwin out, 3 wide receiver sets, McMillan will still be able to provide a fair bit of value and kind of get you that little boost. And who's to say that in any given week, over that 3-week stretch of 15, 16, 17, he can't catch a passing TD, give you a fair bit of small outcome chance, but fair bit of TD upside in those weeks. So I view him as a great, whenever you take Rashee Rice, Chris Godwin, Brandon Ayuk, I really do like taking McMillan. We don't need Waller anymore after never getting back into the Miami stack there. If Arroyo is there, I will take Arroyo. I'm more than happy to do that. We honestly don't play into anything too well for him, but I think Arroyo offers admittedly more upside. I think Freiermuth is a safer option from a season-long perspective, but considering I don't have to start these tight ends, Arroyo is much more ceiling-oriented. And even with that, Freiermuth goes first. Very interesting. Does put us in a weird position. We may have to take Waller now, despite not going with Tua earlier. I would definitely prefer Arroyo, though. While we wait, we can go through this draft. Where are we at here? Started with Bijan. This is one of the few angles where after going Bijan, I did not work. I mean, we worked a little bit into it. Too hard into Tampa Bay or Arizona. I do like, after going Bijan, to kind of really push into either Arizona or Tampa Bay as like a wide receiver, QB heavy stack. In this draft, we don't do that too much. We do get Miami, which immediately set us up with Tyreek Hill for a pretty good Tampa Bay 2-game stack, knowing that Miami plays Tampa, where am I looking at that? Tampa 17, my bad. Afterwards, Marv does play into Bijan week 16, so we already know that. Assuming that we're going to get Tampa Bay later, the only game that we're going to miss out on Bijan is going to be LA. Not too much of a problem, especially in Sprint where you're going 3 games instead of 1. We do get Arroyo here. Perfectly fine with that on my end. Knowing how much Cleveland's going to throw the ball, we at least hope that Njoku is an ADP outperformance and we get some good value at him. Given the target volume he should see in an offense that's going to throw the ball a lot, hopefully with a quarterback like Flacco, who did throw to him and throw to him a lot when he played with Cleveland, hopefully Arroyo doesn't need to do too much for us during the season, and then by week 9, Arroyo should be pretty established in the offense. Been hearing a lot of positive buzz about him out of camp. While tight end has not been overtly a massive part of Seattle's recent offense, they seem to really like him. And Noah Fant was never like a massive part of the fantasy football landscape. So there is some opportunity, especially with Sam Darnold, to maybe do a little bit better than people think he can. And any rookie tight end is going to have massive ceiling in that 15, 16, 17. Getting back to this, we take DK Metcalf at the 4th round. Metcalf, I personally think, how should I put this? Steelers do not have many established receiving options. It's really Metcalf, and then we don't have a wide receiver too. That is the reality of the Pittsburgh Steelers offense this year. We did see that last year Aaron Rodgers can still throw the ball for a lot. He will throw the ball, and he will throw the ball often. Steelers aren't going to force him to do that as much as the Jets did. They're probably going to try to establish the run. That's why I like Caleb Johnson a ton. Rhymed accidentally. The main aspect that we have in Metcalf is I think a lot of people don't appreciate how efficient the Steelers offense can be. Aaron Rodgers can still throw the ball deep. He's likely going to pepper DK Metcalf a lot. Those two things usually provide fantasy value. When you have a receiver that, 1, is going to get a lot of targets, and 2, from your own personal opinion, you expect to be in an offense that is going to be more efficient than the public does. I think that's DK Metcalf in a nutshell. And in BestBall, you have the beautiful luxury of taking all of DK's spike weeks and avoiding the bomb weeks, let's say. We do get a crazy value on Hurts here, about, what was it? 8? Yeah, 8 spots after ADP. Hurts is one of the few rushing quarterbacks where you don't need to kind of stack into him. You can take him naked. So if I'm ever going to get Hurts at an ADP windfall, I'm going to take that. Caleb Johnson, I just spoke on it earlier in the draft too. I think he's one of the few running backs in this range that if they don't currently have the, backfield, he can fully take over the backfield. And if he does, I view him as a top 5 running back in any given week. That's how good I think Caleb Johnson is. I understand why people are worried that he can't fully beat out Warren, but I think that's a time, not talent, disruption there. I think once we get later this season, you're going to see why the Steelers drafted Caleb Johnson and why I think a lot of people are going to miss out on what is a very ceiling-oriented running back this year. Chris Godwin at the next pick. We knew we wanted to work into Tampa Bay after taking Bijan and then Tyreek Hill. We have 2 games for Godwin to play into. I've said this before. I am more often going to be the person that says, hey, you need to slow your roll a little bit on who, when these injury wide receivers are going to get back. Like, more often than not, the public is going to be a lot more positive about when Chris Godwin is going to return this season than what reality usually projects. And even if they are right about when he returns, they don't take into account the the increase in workload, Like, Godwin isn't going to return and play 100% of the snaps. Like, that's just not how the NFL works. That said, I knew that with these current picks, 94 being the next one, we weren't going to get Egbuka. I mean, Egbuka even went before Godwin, which is crazy. I'm not that high on Egbuka this year. So we need to get some Tampa Bay exposure. I didn't want it only to be Rachaad White, and I still like Godwin a fair bit. His points per game last year was very good. Once he's back, he should be a great part of this Tampa Bay offense, which has been fantastic over the past 2 years. Baker's really rejuvenated the team, and he does like throwing to Godwin and Mike Evans. Egbuka, I also like, but 74 is a little much for me. Got an ADP value on B-Rob. B-Rob doesn't play into any of our matchups, but at this point, knowing that we have Caleb Johnson, who even me as a fan knows may not be the most consistent while he earns out the full running back role in the Steelers offense, B-Rob's going to be in a good offense. Could maybe be one of those running backs that we've seen like David Montgomery, who went in a great offense despite maybe not having the full control of the backfield, can net a ton of touchdowns and provide a super ton of value in BestBall. This pick is honestly the only one I really don't like in this draft. Whenever I take Rashee Rice, Chris Godwin, or Ayuk, I never want to double up into one of those 3 names, to be quite honest. It massively raises your ceiling if you happen to get lucky off of injury perspectives. But, your advance rate, more often than not, is going to struggle having both Godwin and Ayuk. On top of that, Godwin doesn't play into anything super well for us. He doesn't have to be a pick that you make. But a combination of those 2 things does not give me a ton of confidence, to be quite honest. Luther Burden, another pick I like. Looking back, doesn't play too well, knowing what I just said. Hey, early season, I'm going to need some wide receiver production. Godwin and Ayuk are not going to give it to us right now. Luther Burden, unless he is literally this year's Amon-Ra, which again, I temper my expectations on, given that the team has DJ Moore. If he is this year's Amon-Ra, then screw what I'm saying. He's the best pick in the draft all year round. I don't think that's going to happen. He provides a ton of value potentially later in the season if he earns his way into a bigger role, and it happens to be that slot role in a Ben Johnson offense. But, like, we needed a little bit more early season production. So, honestly, Trey Harris could have been a better pick. Time will tell. David Njoku, I've spread his praises all throughout this draft. Cleveland's going to throw a ball a lot. Njoku's a great mid-round tight end, especially because he projects out to have a much larger target share than the rest of these tight ends. We just got two great running back values here. Doesn't play anything super well. Jalen Wright just to get a little bit more into Miami. Nick Chubb, just because we could. It was another ADP value. I have been seeing recently in a lot of drafts getting a ton of late round running back ADP value. Whether you like the running backs or not, ADP value is usually positive EV. Almost always, the public is fairly good on ADP. The public is sharper than you think, so getting any ADP value is usually a positive decision on your behalf. Get our second quarterback in Rodgers pairing up with DK, and then closed it out with Knoll and Arroyo. Two rookies that I at least expect, have a fair bit of ceiling. Knoll especially, hopefully he takes that Tank Dell role, and we see some positive outcomes for him. That's it for today's draft. Appreciate you guys for tuning in. I'll be back tomorrow. Will likely be another stream tomorrow, not a video. Try and do a fair bit of streams this week over the videos, so I appreciate everyone who's out here. I'll be back tomorrow. See you soon. Peace.